The Kansas City Chiefs look to capitalize on their big Thursday night win by following it up the next week as the rest of the AFC is playing right now. We're going to get into the big takeaways you need to know about today on Locked On Chiefs.
From the land of the free and the home of the Chiefs, this is the Locked On Chiefs podcast.
Welcome back, everybody. Today's episode of Locked On Chiefs is presented by PrizePicks. Daily fantasy mode is engaged. You want to check this out, and you get 100% instant deposit bonus when you go sign up with our code Locked On over at PrizePicks.com. That's where you want to go. Today, I'm really excited because there's a couple of big takeaways that really point us towards what maybe we didn't expect. We're going to talk about the Chiefs on the positive side, what they need to shore up, and maybe why this season looks a little bit different early on than what we were expecting. Thanks for making us your first listen. This is Locked On Chiefs, part of Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day for free in all aspects. I'm Brian Tracy, the founder of Rogue Analytics and Performance Consulting, NFL33.com, as well as RGR Football.
And I'm Chris Clark, founder of Chiefs Corner. You can find me over there. And there's a lot to talk about in this game, with this team. We will be talking a little bit later about how this season is taking a little bit of a different change over the next couple of weeks. But first, let's talk about a little bit of the positives coming from that Thursday night game, which I finally started to get my voice back from.
Yeah, I mean, it's really unique perspective when you're there and you're in the midst of it. And
sorry about all the video. I apologize for everybody. Really hard to get good video when you're in the parking lot.
You just need a little spotlight there that you can throw in the back of the truck. It'll be fine. It's interesting, though, because it really does change your perspective. Like, what did you notice the most on rewatch for you, given that you saw it live in the stadium the first time?
On rewatch, I think it was just how much Kansas City's struggled early. And I think, I knew that they struggled in the first half, and I kind of had an idea why. They were just missing plays. And, the Chargers defense is really good. So I think that's part of it as well. I think you have to look at how well they played, the Chargers defense played in the first half. And then Kansas City, I think Andy Reid made some great halftime adjustments to really open things up for this offense.
Yeah, I can get down with that. I think while they struggled, I think clearly it wasn't quite as bad as we may have feared in terms of the pass rush that they dealt with. It certainly caused some problems. But as the game went on, I felt like the offensive line kind of settled down. Orlando Brown gave up a pressure, same as Wiley. Even Creed Humphrey gave up a pressure. But
I was going to say Creed Humphrey, that was the one that stuck out to me the most. Sorry, right? I just got to say, him just whiffing on a guy, he never does that. So, one bad play, I mean, I'll take it, I guess. And I'll be honest, I was sitting there in the stadium wearing his jersey. So there you go.
There you go. That makes a difference. I will say this, though, like, despite all that, I felt like they played pretty well as a unit, and they were able to solidify it enough that once the rhythm was established, I felt like Patrick was able to then deliver the ball where he needed to go. It didn't feel like running for his life to me. I thought the O-line solidified a little bit as that ball game went on.
No, and I'd agree with that. I think that they solidified, and I think that they looked a lot better, especially a lot better than I was expecting. I thought that pass rush was going to be very fierce. And I think that they really did a very good job overall. I thought that, Brown looks like he could be legitimately a top 10 left tackle and maybe even higher than that. I think he faced some serious pressure. And yes, he gave up some pressure against the Chargers, but he played very well overall. And he gave Patrick a chance to do what he needed to do, which is be able to step up in the pocket and deliver. And that was exactly what he did on that Watson pass that went for 40 yards.
Yeah, and that's a very good point. Like, I don't know that I agree he's at a top 10 level. There's only 2 times Patrick got hit, and one of them came from Orlando. That's where I draw the line. I don't mind the pressure. It's just you got to keep him from getting hit. You can't let him get contacted. That's what makes the difference on the course of the season, not necessarily in the ball game. You know what I mean? So, like,
and I get that. I guess I just look at Bosa as being one of those top DNs that you're going to lose some against, and that's really where I'm coming from.
That's true.
I thought that, Bosa has given the Chiefs a fit in the past. And I think that's what really stood out to me is that Orlando didn't lose near as much as you would expect him to going against a guy like that and going against Khalil Mack at times. And overall, yeah, you don't want to see Patrick get hit. I completely agree with you on that. But, one hit from Orlando, I think that's a good day against that Chargers defensive line.
Yeah, I agree with you. Now, The other thing that they did that I personally like, and everybody knows that I like this because I want them to run the ball more, right? But outside of a huge break off there, 52 yards for Clyde, it was what, 7 for 26 yards? Not the greatest clip. Pacheco, I think, was right at 3. Clyde was there, 3.5-ish. McKinnon was at 3, that kind of thing. Like, it wasn't getting the big things until that chunk. The best yards per carry on actual carries, other than that one big play, was Mike Burton at 6 yards. That's not enough, but it's a good start. And it feels like, despite the fact that Andy's still only calling, like, it's less than average. Last year, he called 32.8% run. And I think we're hovering somewhere around 27% for these 2 weeks together. So it's still lower, but it feels like it has more of an impact on the ball game.
Yeah, and I can see that. And I think that it's what you're going to see is, I think one of the things you saw in this game against the Chargers is the Chargers went out and they spent trying to stop the run. They were horrible against the run in 2021. Yeah. They went out and they spent trying to stop the run. And they were able to do that against Kansas City for the most part. So Kansas City opened up the offense a little bit and really tried to use their screen game at times and their short passing game at times, which Andy, as you know, and I know you don't like, really basically considers a running play almost.
Yeah.
And I get you don't like it, and I understand why, but I also understand where he was coming from and why he was doing it. I also think it helps negate the pass rush at times, so that also is going to help your offensive line.
Yeah, I mean, that's fair. And I'll give you this. Like, I didn't feel like the screen game was really churning along, but the fact that you went back to it, I think, helps and keeps that honest and keeps that defense on its toes. So in terms of the overall scope of the play call, we'll talk about some of the predictabilities and some of the problems later, and definitely again tomorrow. But I think overall, keeping the balance, it felt like the balance was there for an early season game. There's going to be some twists and turns because I don't think that's the way it's going to remain. This was kind of a unique situation. We're going to get into why. But before, we're going to tell you about our friends at PrizePicks because there are more ball games coming. There's a doubleheader on Monday Night Football, and I personally am going to take Josh Allen to surpass the 165.5 line in terms of yardage. That's an easy one, in my opinion. And that's the nice thing about daily fantasy sports at PrizePicks. That's all you have to do. They'll set a line projection. You choose whether they beat it or they fall underneath it. Not a big deal. You do 2-3 of those and you're all set. You can win up to 10 times your bet doing it. You're not competing against other people and you're not competing against a lineup that you have to tweak or do anything like that. It's just a projection, yes, no, and you roll on. They offer everything, all the major sports, even like disc golf and MMA, all the things like strike percentage, I think would be an interesting bet in MMA. We'll get into that down the line. Maybe that's an off-season thing. Entries can be made in 60 seconds or less. They're safe and fast withdrawals, and they're currently operating in 30 states plus Canada. All you have to do is go grab that app, take a look at it. It's prizepicks.com is their website. You can get it there. You can get it in the App Store. It's daily fantasy sports at its core, and you get 100% deposit bonus right now. So if you put in 100, you get 100 with our code Locked On. That is a big bonus that you get to then play with, get into the groove, and take some of these really interesting numbers. Interesting that Aaron Rodgers, as we sit here recording before Sunday night, he's still actually, his threshold is 246. Given the way their season's going, that might be an interesting as well. So don't forget, use that promo code Locked On at prizepicks.com. So not everything can be hunky-dory and super smooth. You got to have some hiccups. Rashad Fenton understands that. A team that has generally gotten him a couple of times, in Mike Williams in particular, but the Chargers had a rough night. I know Jalen Watson made the big play, but what I've heard this weekend from a lot of fans is Jalen's got to be the starter there. Rashad's out. I think that's an overreaction. How do you feel?
It's definitely an overreaction to one play. I think that you look at what it really is going to mean for this Chiefs team and for what they're going to do on defense. Mike Williams is a very, very hard cover. It doesn't matter who you are, unless you're a long, tall corner like a guy like maybe Joshua Williams. That's going to be a very tough call. And Williams just isn't ready for that role yet. Maybe he will be later in the season, or maybe he will have an opportunity to play some of that later. Fitton is a good corner. I think that he is going to be a guy that is going to continue to get better for Kansas City, and I think it is a complete overreaction on that one INT, which I will say this. I went back and I watched that play. If Everett isn't gassed, I don't know that play goes the way it did.
See, I disagree. I looked at it too. It felt like Watson was hiding behind him. Like, I think there was a vision problem. I don't know that Herbert even saw him there, to tell you the truth.
No, and he might not have, but Everett didn't even make a play for the ball, is my point.
True.
He was completely gassed. You saw it right before that play. He was asking to come out, and he didn't get to come out, and he didn't even make an effort for the ball. All I'm saying is if he makes an effort for the ball, at worst case, I think it's a broke-up pass. I don't think it's a TD, and it's not a pick six going the other direction.
Yeah, that's fair. And
I'm not trying to take anything away from Jalen Watson. It was a great play by him.
Yeah,
I'm just
exactly.
saying.
Be opportunistic. He certainly did, but that doesn't mean down for down. Although I will say, I had a couple of ticks in my takeaways from him that earlier in the game when they tested him, he came up positive too. Like that he was able to withstand, especially Williams, because they wanted to feed him.
And I think the bigger thing that I'm taking away from that game is that Watson is not a guy that's going to get down on himself. Yeah. You watched how much they picked on him and how much they threw at him, specifically at him. And he didn't care, and he still made the game's biggest play.
Yeah. I mean, the only guy they picked on more was Willie Gay. Actually, I lied. They threw more at L'Jarius as well. 9 targets for L'Jarius. And we know that there was that one circus catch touchdown by Williams, the one-hander on the shoelaces and all that kind of stuff. Whatever you guys do, don't look at PFF. I'm just telling you. You're not going to be happy. But I don't take anything away from what L'Jarius did. That was a circus catch, and I don't think that could be made by maybe 3 other receivers in this league. So,
well, and it's a perfect throw. I mean, you're good. We've seen that time and time again. And if you think about it, late in the fourth quarter, and I don't remember, it was to Carter, I believe, that Herbert stepped up and hit Carter down the seam on another perfect throw. You're going to have those plays where you're just going to get beat, and you have to try to make it to where those plays aren't going to kill you. And unfortunately for Kansas City, 2 of those big plays really hurt them, but they survived and they won. So,
well, and kudos to Watson because he went from 0 to 60 or 0 to 40 in this case, 40 snaps that he was out there in coverage for. That's a lot to withstand. Willie Gay played more than that, 46 total pass plays and 41 in coverage. But Willie was targeted 14 times. Now, part of that is because you have Eckler and you have Everett. You have 2 guys that linebackers are generally going to match up on that you feel you want to get the ball to in your offense, especially without Keenan Allen there. You're trying to attack the middle, right? A lot of folks are going to say Willie didn't hold up that well. I think it was actually positive because while, yes, he gave up 13 catches on 14 targets, that is a lot. You also have to understand that that's PFF, assuming what his area of responsibility was. The only problem I have with Willie Gay, because he did cause PBU, he forced an incompletion, he had a TFL, he was all over the place. If it wasn't for the missed tackles, I would say Willie Gay played about as good a game as he could in those situations.
2 big ones, 2 huge missed tackles. Exactly. And if you look at that, even if you're in a situation where Willie Gay is targeted on those 2 plays, he would have had tackles for losses on both of them. Yeah. He was in the right position. He was in a good spot. And Eckler made a miss. I believe it was Eckler both times, but they made a miss. And
it's what he does.
I hate seeing it, but that is it's exactly what you just said. That's what he does. He's good at that type of thing. That is one of the things he has made his career on, is making people miss in the open field. And he got Gay on both those plays.
Well, and he's not alone. Obviously, there were other missed tackles. Jalen Watson obviously had a couple as well. But that's not the bigger thing. There were 10 in week 1. There were 11 in week 2. So it's not to single anyone out. It's just that there are still a lot of missed tackles on this defense to clean up. This is a theme. We've seen this every season since the Super Bowl, is that it's really sloppy early and they tend to put it together about week 4, week 5, something like that. If we don't see that, or if we see this trend continue to get worse in terms of the volume of missed tackles every week, then we might have something on our hands that playing rookies is playing into, but the coaching staff has to buckle down on and reemphasize.
And I don't disagree with that, but I would also challenge it with the fact that I think this defense is playing better than I ever thought they were going into week 3. You look at the Cardinals game, that wasn't even a game. They didn't let the Cardinals score very much until the game was out of reach. And to hold Justin Herbert and that Chargers offense to what they held them to in that game, and to come up with the game's biggest play on defense and basically pull a win out for your offense because the offense wasn't doing enough. I think this defense is playing a lot better. If they can get the missed tackles cleaned up, they're going to be in great shape.
Knock on wood. I think that's really like the Achilles heel right now. We all know about what they talk about, not having time to practice tackling in particular, because it just gets really thin. And you're now multiple, we're approaching a month. I'm sorry. As we record this, we're a month removed from training camp where you actually had the time to practice tackling. So
Right.
it's got to be something that they work back into the system. I think that they're going to be okay, but it is something that I want to monitor going forward. And there's a lot to monitor, folks. What we thought this early season stretch was going to be may not actually crumble the way we thought that cookie was built. We're going to get into what's coming next after this.
Turo is the world's largest car sharing marketplace. With Turo, you can book any car you want wherever you want it from a community of local hosts. You need to go check out Turo.com. There's a huge selection of vehicles for just about any occasion or budget across the US, Canada, and even the UK. Book a spacious SUV or a minivan for a family road trip. Get a classic or luxury car for a special event, birthday, or holiday. Find affordable economy cars if you're on a budget and just need to get from A to B. Test drive that new electric vehicle you've had your eye on to see how it fits your everyday life. Many Turo hosts can even deliver the car right to you. Every trip is backed by liability insurance. Terms and conditions and exclusions apply. Ditch boring rental cars and find your drive at Turo.com.
So as the season opens, it's always, it's Christmas. It's you're opening a new gift. The Chiefs started in a way that I think limited some of the things that they wanted to do by having that 4-day turnaround on week 1 to week 2. They had to start game planning for the Chargers back in training camp. So you had a play call or an install of the play sheet in a way that kind of bridged the gap between Cardinals and Chargers. I don't think it was 100%. There are a couple of fallbacks there, starting with the fact Jody Fortson got 6 snaps in this second game, which is inexplicable to me given the way that he's played. But I do think that is a function of the preparation phase, not a reflection of his actual play. Am I wrong?
I don't think so. I think that his play has been very good. And I think that and I will say this, Patrick didn't play great on Thursday night. I think most people would accept that and agree with that. But if Patrick throws that touchdown, that ball to Fortson up, I think Fortson comes down with it, and it's not even a question. If he puts it another foot up, I think Fortson easily comes up with that touchdown pass. And there wasn't really much that Samuel could have done. Fortson was in a perfect position. And that's the exact type of play that Kansas City hasn't been able to do in the past because they haven't had a wide receiver that can do that. Or really you don't really want to use a guy like Travis Kelce in that scenario either because he's not really a jumper in that regard. Can he go up and get the ball? Yes. Is that his forte? No. And really quick, I know we're talking about the usage of Fortson, but I also want to say Kansas City needs to find a way to get Kelce off the field more. And I say that because you cannot have him playing 90% of the snaps. And that's basically what he did against the Chargers. I know how important he is to this offense, but you have to get Fortson and Gray more involved.
Well, I agree with you. And I think that was a situation because it was the Chargers, because the game was still close. I agree with you completely. And I do think that both usage for Travis and for Jody will change now that they have a full weeks of preparation every week here going forward. No more Thursday nights.
Yeah, and the bonus for Kansas City is now you have extra time to prepare for the Colts this next week, and you get more time to rest guys and get ready for all of this going on.
I think rest and Colts go pretty hand in hand because I think if you just napped through the next week, the Chiefs are probably ready for the Colts.
Yeah, I really don't know what to say about that. You look at what that team has become in Indianapolis. I thought they were going to run away with their division pretty easily.
Me too.
And losing to the Jaguars and not scoring a point, I will say this. The one caveat that scares me just a little bit is this seems like a perfect trap-type game for Kansas City that they've had trouble with in the past.
You are absolutely right.
Yeah, I still think Kansas City should have won. If I was picking again, I would still say that the Chiefs should win against the Colts regardless. But my point is that this is a chance. The Colts are going to be pissed. The Colts are going to be 0-2, and now they're going to be sitting there in a situation where they have to try to fight for their life, fight for even their playoff hopes right now at 0-2. I mean, you think that that's a little too early to say. Well, no, they've already lost 2 divisional games.
Yeah,
they're in a horrible position, and they haven't looked good, obviously, when they're doing it. So it's a big game for them, and it's not as big of a game for Kansas City. That's a little bit of a problem. But I don't think Andy's going to let them get out of it that easily. And really, if Kansas City can find a way to shut down Jonathan Taylor or at least control him, they're going to be in a good shape for this game.
Yeah, that's the interesting thing. We're going to talk about that later in the week with both Matt and then obviously our crossover. Old Jake, if you guys haven't heard from Jake yet, old friend of ours, is now with Locked On the Colts beat. We'll get to him later in the week, but
can't wait to talk to him.
It does change the expectation, right? And Leo Chanel, I think, is going to play a big part. We'll preview what we'll talk about later in the week, folks. Is Leo went from 10 snaps week 1 to 22 week 2, and he wasn't targeted. You would think they would have tried to devise something out when you see 54 out there, but he will play a bigger role because of Jonathan Allen and what these Colts have to do, because they're not what we thought they were going to be. Likewise,
I was just going to say, and his one pass rush snap, he got home and hit him.
Yeah. Big plus. I mean, that's exactly what we want, right?
Yep.
But I do think he's going to be on the field more in this next week. And originally what we thought was going to be a barn burner, like have to have, like maybe it doesn't mean that. Maybe that does get him into the flow a lot more because they're not what we thought. And neither are the Tampa Bay Bucks right now. This was a really interesting game for you fantasy guys like me who had Mike Evans going today. Sorry about that little brawl there.
Yeah, no joke, right?
But regardless, the Bucks are not as strong as we thought they were. So what looked like it was going to be really troublesome stretch of game 2, 3, and 4 were going to be back-to-back headbangers. It looks like it's something that, as long as they're smart, as long as they can stay healthy, that they should be able to navigate their way through.
Yeah, and you have to wonder with Evans going into that brawl, getting into that brawl, and him, it looked like he came off the bench. I didn't see it completely, but if he came off the bench, you have to wonder if the NFL is going to set a precedent and suspend him for a couple of games. I know he got tossed, but he launched himself at the guy, and so I don't know. I mean, maybe he's available to play week 4. I just don't know at this point. I'm not trying to speculate. We'll see what they do, but it was really interesting to see that brawl and then to watch that game and watch how in the fourth quarter it was 3-3. Brady throws a long touchdown pass and they go up 10-3, and then they get a pick 6. And I think that they kicked a field goal in between that, and I think it also came off another Jameis interception. So their defense is playing well, but their offense isn't really functioning very well. And the question when it comes to that offense is going to be the offensive line. Obviously, Tom Brady is Tom Brady, but he's not going to function well if he's not getting the time to throw. And that offensive line is hurting and lost a lot of key players over the past couple of months with retirements and injuries.
Mm-hmm. And let's hope that bodes well for what happens the next couple of weeks, because we've gotten through the first big hurdle with the Chargers, right? And now if there's a lull there, right now, as we record, the Las Vegas Raiders are beating the Arizona Cardinals. That will be game 5. And then it's the Buffalo Bills. And then it's on. So you could see a way that they can get there as long as they can hold court, and as long as they can take away, the mistakes in the missed tackles and some of the near interceptions that Patrick's been putting out there. Some are calculated where he thinks he has a penalty, and then I'm perfectly fine with that. Some of them are not. So there's a lot of cleanup still to be done, but to be at this position right now, I think is a big plus. So we're looking forward to this next couple of games.
Yeah, and you talk about the Raiders. I think that's still a winnable game for Kansas City, and then you're absolutely right about the Bills. I still think that with the way the Chiefs played the first week and knowing who they win against in week 2, I still think they have a great shot of being undefeated by the time they take on the Bills. But if you look at the rest of the schedule past that, they play the 49ers after that. I think that should be an easier game, even more so than we would have thought early in the season as well. Trey Lance just actually went out with an injury. We'll see what happens with him. But then you look at the Titans right after that, after their bye. Mm-hmm. The Titans did not look good week 1.
I'll take that.
And yeah. I mean, this season, this schedule looked like it was going to be brutal in the first half. And it has completely changed in the first 2 weeks.
Now, every team can change. That could still flip back. We don't know. But Absolutely. As it stands right now, we're feeling pretty optimistic. We're going to dig into not only other takeaways, we'll get Matt's opinion later in the week about this game and about where they're going here this next week against the Colts. But I think you're going to hear an emphasis on the run game. It's pretty straightforward, especially don't know if Pittman's going to be able to return for the Colts. He was out this week. We'll see how their rookie does as well. I still really like him, but, Alec Pierce is again, a rookie. So what does that do for Matt Ryan? Oh, did he not play? I missed that part.
I thought he was out. I saw Pittman and Pierce were out, but maybe I'm wrong on Pierce.
Well, I think that leads us up to what's going to be one of the keys this week. We're going to talk about the pass rush and how to get to that aged quarterback that obviously without tools is going to be difficult to beat. But let us know what you think. What's your big takeaway from this ball game? Leave it in the YouTube comments. Leave it in the Spotify reviews as well as the Apple Podcast reviews. Lots going on there. We have stuff for you. Again, if you don't know us, every day you get us. Every day. 20, 25 minutes of Chiefs talk and what is important here on Locked On Chiefs. He's Chris Clark. I'm Ryan Tracy. Thanks for listening to us today. We'll talk to you tomorrow.